awesome and amazing women who have been in the trenches. They know what it's like to have a life where things just caught them off guard, and they push through it. And that to me is what inspiration is just showing up, being sincere and genuine with what you've got. And so what these women have got tonight is some amazing takeaways that we want to share with you. I call this a courage tour because I want to take you to different places, to different women, and give you a chance to understand that in all of this, we all are different. We all have different stories, but we all have a story. And we all have a point in our life where we were caught off guard and we second guess, am I really all that? And that's what the Lioness Summit is about, is yes, you are. You are more than that. And the women I bring in are to remind you that you are fearless and you are awesome. And I can't wait for you to hear from everyone tonight. One thing I would like for everyone to do is make sure you have a pen and some paper, or you're ready to take notes, because the takeaways tonight are going to be incredible from these women. And I can't wait to get started here, so I'm going to do that. The first lady that I did want to introduce to you tonight is going to be Sam. I apologize. I'm going to make sure I stay in order. Is going to be Sam Konda. And I wanted to first thank you for being here. And thank you for everything that I have been watching you do. I've met Sam through working with Sheila Muskin, and we were in the same Facebook group together and all the training. And I was just caught. I was just caught by her tenacity and her perseverance and her grace-filled life, and how she just keeps pouring out to women, and how just classy she is on everything, and so calm. And I've enjoyed getting to know her. She's a dear friend. She is not only John Maxwell certified as a speaker and a coach, she's gone beyond that. If you go onto YouTube, she has a good, strong YouTube presence where she does videos. I remember the first time that she ever was doing that, and we were talking about that, how uncomfortable it is. So I want every one of y'all to understand right now, this makes me uncomfortable being in front of a live camera, because I'm so worried I'm going to say one thing wrong or forget something. And we all do, but we're here doing it. We're showing up, and we are sharing what is on our hearts, and we're sharing inspiration for you. So I want every one of you who are like, I could never do that. Yes, you can. If we can get up here and do it, yes, you can. You truly can share your story with your courageous life. Sam is, I would like for her to introduce herself right now, and tell us a little bit about what it's like to be coming here to America. And to me, it's interesting because what would, and I want to ask you this, what would it be like to be an inspiration in your culture versus being an inspiration here? Is there a difference?
Wow. So I'll get into that in just a little bit, but Darla, thank you so much for having me. And I'm looking forward to hearing Marva and Jenna's stories too. But I'd like to share my story first before I get into what you've asked me. Usually when I have people over to my house, I'd like to serve them some good spicy Indian delicious appetizers on a 3-tiered platter. I don't know if you can see this platter over here. It's a 3-tiered platter. And there you go. It's my favorite platter because I can nicely place what I want to, and people can pick neatly from them. And I'd like to serve my story on this 3-tiered platter today. On the bottom plate right there is my childhood. I was born into a family that is completely sold out to Jesus. My parents were in full-time ministry. My dad is a pastor. And growing up as a pastor's kid, and for me and for my brother, actually, it gave us an opportunity to see God's faithfulness and God's goodness in very tangible ways. You know, we had this front row seat to so many wonderful things that God was doing, not just in our lives, but in the lives of people around us. And that really emboldened our faith. God wasn't a concept of infinitely high somewhere, out of reach, but he was an intimately nigh, very close. He is somebody who is just a call away. We really felt his presence because of what my parents were involved in. And that really strengthened our faith. I remember when I was still in elementary, there was a knock on our door late in the night, and there was this lady standing there. It was my mom's friend with this great big bag of rice. It was about 100 pounds. It was a 50 kg bag of rice. And she stood there. It was 10 o'clock in the night. And she said, I really felt that I needed to bring you this. And after she left, my mom sat me and my brother down, and she said, if she didn't come and give us that bag of rice, come tomorrow, we wouldn't have any rice to eat. And I have to confess, South Indians eat concerning amounts of rice. I mean, we have it for lunch and dinner, even some of our breakfast have rice. So um, it was an important, it was our sustenance basically. And so that and many other instances like that really cemented the fact that God is real and He is really concerned for us in our everyday walk, in our everyday lives. And as we were growing up, we were given this front row seat to just many, many miracles, that God is real. We never doubted that, is God just a concept out there? Can He be, a God who knows every cry of my heart? And I have to tell you, that has never been a question. He does know every cry, and He will meet every need just at the right time if we continue to trust in Him. Another concept that was really emphasized when I was growing up in my home was, whatever we do or whatever we desire, it has to align with the will of God. If something that we desire is not God's will, if something that we want to do, whether it's our goals or anything that we want to pursue, if it doesn't align with God's will, then we are definitely moving away from God's will. If basically what I meant to say was, if we don't follow God's will, then we are moving away from God. So that was something that really was taught when we were growing up. And I tried to bring this into my own life with my children now. So one day when my younger son came and he said, Mommy, I want a bike. I want you to buy a bike for my birthday. At that point, he was actually using his brother's bike, a hand-me-down. And I said, Emmanuel, God willing, okay? And he happily raced off. And I kind of felt like he didn't get it. So I called him back, and I asked him, did you understand what I said? He said, yes. You said God is going to willingly give it to me. I thought, that is so positive. I wish I had that kind of positivity when I was growing up. You know, Usually whenever we asked our parents something, especially during our teenage years, we never got a yes or a no or a maybe or wait. We always got, let's pray about it, or if it is God's will. Okay, so if they said, let's pray about it, it almost always meant like, no. If they said God willing, there's a probable chance that they might agree. Okay, so I thought that was really funny when my kid was like, God is going to willingly give it to me. I thought that was really positive. The Bible talks about kids and how we have to emulate their faith, right? So but moving up to tier 2, the concept of following God's will was so strong, especially when it came to picking our life partners, both for me and my brother. And I was the first one to get married in my house. And um, when it was time for me to get married and my parents were thinking about it and praying about it, following God's will was a very important thing. You do not choose somebody that is against God's will. You don't want to do anything that is, against what the Lord has spoken about in the Bible. You always pick a believer. So that was very core concept in our house. So God's will was not just a prominent idea, it was preeminent. We were supposed to follow that in every area of our lives. And long story short, my dad prayerfully decided that I would be getting married to my husband. For me, it felt like one day you're driving down the road and you look at this big banner of an open house. You walk in the house just to look at it, but then you walk out with a nice signed contract, right? So for me, it felt like one day there was this parents, my husband's parents, who came to see me. And then it was decided that I was going to get married to their son. Except when you walk into this house and you walk out with this contract, I never got to see the house. They just told me that this was a 3 bedroom, 2.5 bath house. It may or may not have a backyard, and you're going to live in this house for the rest of your life. So that was how I felt. But between the time that it was decided that I was going to get married to the time that I actually met my husband, it was 2.5 months. And in that time, cards were printed, invitations were sent. I mean, arrangements were made, venues were booked, and all of this stuff happened. And then I met my husband. It was a formal engagement ceremony. And the next time I saw him was when I was walking down the aisle. And less than 3 weeks later, here I was in California along with my husband, almost strangers to each other, but that's how we started our life. I can tie the story up in a nice, pretty bow and say we were holding hands and we walked into this beautiful California beach sunset. But that's not how the story went. You know, excuse me, I'm dealing with a little cold here. But so reality began to hit, there was this gap between my expectation and then the experience of my reality. And slowly disappointment started to creep in that gap. And I was just grieving this disappointment, this gap between my expectation of how life would be and the reality of what was going on. And these are the exact moments where Satan, the enemy, tries to take a chance, and he tries to put on top of of this disappointment, he tries to put doubt on it. Could my parents have got it wrong? The enemy was trying to say, maybe this was not God's will for me. Maybe they got it wrong. They may have gotten all of these other things right when you were growing up, but maybe this wasn't. And as I spent time, dwelling on that disappointment, in that just gap of grieving and disappointment, I remember driving one day and I was just overcome with so much of grief. I pulled over to the curb and I was just weeping, just bawling. And suddenly I felt like God was saying, this isn't about you. I was like, what? This life isn't about you. And he said, it's not about you being happy. It's not about your convenience, your comfort, what you want, when you want, how you want it. Learn to lean into my sufficiency. Nothing, no thing, no person is capable enough to make you happy. Nothing in this world can actually satisfy you. You have to learn to lean into my sufficiency. I am enough. So when I actually heard that, to be honest, I felt like, no, I want this life to be about me. But then the Lord slowly started, turning my heart. As a parent, I can relate. God is not so, his ultimate goal is not our happiness, but it is our holiness. As a parent, I want my kids to be happy, but I really want them to develop character. I really want them to grow in their character, and that's my ultimate goal for them. So that's how I actually started learning to lean into the Lord, and to give all credit to my husband too. He never met me either, and he had to make a decision, from a picture that he saw, from the few conversations in those 2.5 months that we had. And you have to remember, these conversations were when the international phone lines were still charged. You still have to pay a lot of money to make an international call. So you were going to ask me something.
Yeah, I was going to. So that's what I was going to. I was wondering, as far as like the inspiration that comes from understanding how to put yourself aside, to put yourself, not to be not taking care of yourself, because that's very important, but to also understand, and we've talked about this before, that it's not about you all the time. And sometimes when we step back from our expectations and take a look at what's going on around us, it does give us a different perspective of how to look at life. And Jenna, I was going to ask you about that too, because as far as like you had some great expectations of what you were going into as well. And you got turned around too, didn't you, for what you were were heading into? And I wanted to ask, and I want to come back to you, Sam, but I want to ask Jenna real quick. Jenna is a transformation coach, and she works with women, helping them to understand that taking care of yourself is so important, and to not abuse your body in the way of it's got to look like a certain picture that someone else is, or a certain size, but to eat healthy, but to be realistic, and to exercise, but not to abuse the privilege of getting to exercise. And Jenna has been working with women across the board on her the psychology, I guess I could say, behind what comes into taking care of yourself all the way around, and inspiring women to quit worrying about that size. And don't look at that, but look at who you are and why are you doing it. When I was talking with Jenna, I met her through an amazing group here in Franklin, and to hear her story was so cool. How just talking with women, finding out why they have some eating disorders, or why they are overeating or not taking care of their bodies. It started out when they were really young and they just never wanted to deal with it. So Jenna, I want to introduce Jenna Smiley, Miss Jenna Fit, and share with us a little bit about your where you came from, where you're at right now, just real quick.
Yeah, so I must start by admitting that I haven't always been that way. It took my own healing to lead me to the place where I can now help other women with their healing. But, like you said, a lot of our trauma around our body image, our confidence starts at a really young age, and we don't even know that it's happening. So it's not even necessarily things that we just don't want to deal with. It's things that we don't even know exist within us. And that's what I try to help women really figure out. And I really work specifically with women, because whether you're a mother, a wife, a pup mom, or you're in college, whatever you have that's kind of pulling you away from doing that self-care and putting yourself first, we lose that, we lose ourselves. And it goes back to the whole cliche of putting your own oxygen mask on first before you try to help somebody else, which, like I said, that's why I needed to work on my own trauma first. But I'm definitely not doing what when I was a teenager, I thought I'd be a nurse, and that would kind of be my path. So yes, my life has taken a completely different journey, but everything, as we know, happens in God's perfect timing. And I love what I do now. But just a little backstory on how I got here is, I have always, like most young girls, always just had that little thing in the back of my head that was, I needed to be skinnier, or I needed to look better, or, fix your hair, makeup, whatever. And I took that to the extreme physically when I started running and doing half marathons. And for people who know me, I don't like to run. Like, I've never liked to run. Even in my training, I was like, this is horrible. I hate this. But what drove me was, well, I'll be skinny. And I did, total restriction on food, and I was skinny. Okay. But then I moved into bodybuilding, which was a little more challenging, but I liked that. I loved lifting weights and things like that. And I found myself looking on the outside, like, you know, people would probably look at me and be like, what does she have to complain about? And I was just so miserable. And I would meet women at these shows who were still complaining about different parts of their bodies. And I just thought, you know, this isn't right. We're created in his image, and we're supposed to love the body that we're in. And that should not be our main focus. We should not just constantly be worried about that. And so I went on a completely different journey to really discovering my own inner healing. And that brought a ton of weight gain for me. And that was really hard to deal with too. And it took me a while to figure out the balance behind it all and what makes me make the decisions that I was making and why I was being so hard on myself and treating myself the way that I did. And it's really cool. I mean, I've experienced it, so it's really cool to be on the other side of that. And, you know, we had a networking event last night, and one of the awesome girls in the group makes cookies, and they are gorgeous. And I told her, I said, we should do a collaboration and do some cookies, because, you know, any good workout, health, weight loss plan should always involve cookies, if you ask me. But yeah, so I have, you know, since then been working with women mostly. You know, I seem to work more with women with either young children or maybe empty nesters who are kind of like, I don't know what to do with myself now. You know, it's easy when we have young children to put ourselves aside and just focus on the kids or focus on the house or whatever. But then we find ourselves in a place where we don't even really know who we are or what we want. And I feel like I definitely went through that. And I know a lot of other women who have gone through that too. So I like to say I'm the bridge that helps you find your purpose and find yourself again. And I absolutely love that. I love watching women have breakthroughs, and I love watching women, you know, text me pictures of delicious homemade cinnamon rolls that they're enjoying for breakfast, and just being like, hey, I'm doing this and I'm still okay, you know, and I'm still worthy, and I'm still loved. And yeah, so I love doing that. Yeah.
It shows. I was watching some of your workouts online, and I was like, man, she knows what she's doing. And you do a great job with it. But I love the psychology behind it. And I even posted this right now. So I'd love to hear from all of y'all who are watching. And even those who are going to be coming back watching the recording, we'd love to hear back from you. Come on to our Facebook page and let us know, what does being an inspiration mean to you? For Sam, it meant showing up even when she was not quite sure where she was in life. And being an inspiration meant to be herself. For Jenna, it meant showing up, understanding that you don't have to fit into what the world says you're supposed to look like. And that there's so much more behind it, and that we shouldn't use the food and the workouts as a and dare I say this, Jenna, as a crutch, as a substitute for taking care of yourself and dealing also with the emotions that come along that create that. Because I know I had always wanted to be one of those that if I got upset, I would say, oh, I can't eat. Well, I was the opposite. When I got upset, when I got stressed, I was going to be the one that would eat a whole pan of brownies while I was crying. And so we all have different things with that. But thank you for doing it. Thank you for taking time to help women understand how to deal with the emotions of what's connected with the food, because there is so much psychology behind all that, Jenna. And I appreciate what you're doing and taking that transformation. I would dare say you are being a nurse to some extent. You might not walk around giving shots, but you really are taking care of people. And I see where that heart of wanting to help people be better is playing out right now with what you're doing. So yeah, I guess we need to send you a little nurse's hat and say yes. And so I want to speak now with Miss Marva. Marva has just been a ray of sunshine. I have loved talking with her. Marva has come from an extraordinary background of working there in the British Virgin Islands. And is it 10 o'clock at night for you right now?
It's after 8 p.m.
Okay.
Yeah, we're 2 hours ahead of you.
Well, thank you so very much for hopping on with us with a totally different time zone. And thank you. We're honored to have you here. Marva's background is amazing and stellar and just very strategic of everything you've done with the government there and working with planning and marketing and strategic, all the teams that you've worked with. I could go on, I told her when we started, I could go on a huge long list for each of these women, and I could spend the whole hour telling you what all these women have accomplished, but then you never get to see the heart of who they are and what they're doing now. So I would like for Marva to explain a little bit where she came from, why she shifted and is being an entrepreneur here, helping women, and tell us also a little bit, you've got a retreat coming up too, I do believe.
Yes. Thank you, Darla. I'm really excited to be here and just to really share my story as well. And it's amazing how I think all of us can relate in some way to what the other woman has shared. And, we really started out talking about expectations. In Sam's case, it was the expectations about, what she thought her life was going to be as a married woman. And in Jenna's case, it was expectations for what she was going to do in life and her body as well. And for me, it was also about expectations in terms of my career. So, from high school, I knew exactly what I wanted to do. I wanted to be an architect, and I really just went after that. I, got the job right out of high school, just as a trainee draftsman, so to speak. So that kind of tells you, even from the title, the sort of biases that were in place at that time for women in architecture. But, that just really spurred me on even more. And I went to college after a few years, just, trying to figure out what the field was about, and got my education in the US, Ivy League education, and just really doing all the things to pursue the career that I thought I wanted. And I loved it. I really, really did. So I started from a trainee and worked in public service all the way up to the top of my field, being the chief planner for the government of the Virgin Islands at the time, and just really loving that until one day I didn't, because, it got to a point where my life had changed. I had young kids, I was married at the time, and, still married, but, just really at a place where I felt that my priorities were not in the same place anymore. And I think that a lot of women find themselves in a place where you know what you want, or maybe you don't even know what you want, but you go after it with all your heart. And you receive that the success and the kudos that come along with that. And then you realize that maybe it's not what it's cracked up to be. And I had to make a really big shift. I had to make some tough decisions, and it was the best decision of my life. I could say one of the best, because I decided to retire at 42. And so I know some people are thinking that must be crazy. It probably was, but really it was really a good decision, because I think when you get to a point where you feel that, you're giving your best to something, that the returns, my kids were getting the leftovers, it just wasn't the best for my family. And I needed to make that change. And I'm really glad that I did. So I have to confess that at the time when I retired from my position with the government, that I really didn't have a plan as to what next, but God, because God totally allowed me to use the gifts and the talents and the training that I have in strategic planning and management as well to be able to transition into management consulting and training and development, and then into coaching as well. So now I'm in a place where I coach women who were in that place of feeling like she has it all, but has that nudge that there's something more. And that's where I really thrive, because I feel that there are a lot of women who are like me, and, just so much to give, so much talent, so much that it's at a point where she knows that there's something else that God is calling her to do. So I really partner with women, whether it's one-on-one coaching or, there's a retreat that I have coming up at the end of December, the 28th and 29th. It's called Daring to Dream Again, because it's really being able to help women to see what God is doing in their lives, and just to be able to partner with them, and to find that space where they can thrive in work, in life, in faith, in all the areas that are important to them. So not really living up to the expectations of society, or even their own expectations of what they thought success looked like, but to really sort of partner with God to see what success is according to his terms. So that's my passion, and I'm just really thrilled to be here to share any tips or wisdom, and to learn from these women as well, and to learn from Darla. And I'm just so excited.
When I looked at all the strategic planning that you've done and all the groups that you have headed up, I see how that can come into play, helping women now when you are coaching and learning how to listen. And I think every one of us here can understand that statement right there. In order to be inspiring and to be an inspiration, the first thing you've got to do, just like Sam's mom, when that lady brought food to them, she was listening, not only when God is nudging you, but paying attention to people around you. You don't have to show up with bells flashing and everything. This lady showed up at Sam's home when she was growing up at 10 o'clock at night, and at night, but she knew there was a need there. That's inspiring. That is inspiring. Jenna has shown up for women when no one else knew this conversation was going on, and was encouraging them. And what the women will end up doing in their life is going to be evidential from that conversation in private that sparked from being an inspiration to someone else. And Marva, I've seen how you have done that, and I love our conversations because you challenge me with questions that no one ever asked me, and I like that because that comes from a strategic background of, you've got to encompass everything when you're planning and you're making strategies that are going to stick. And I believe as women, we, here in the South, I don't know how all the rest of y'all are, but here in the South, women a lot of time, I'll just tell you, growing up, I thought I had to do everything. I had to look great doing it. My home had to stay clean. I had to cook food and be there for everything. If someone was having a baby or a funeral, and I kept wearing myself out. And it was hard to be strategic because I never got a grasp on what I was really supposed to be doing. And I feel like part of being an inspiration is being strategic and understanding how to say no. And I'd love to hear y'all's comment on that, because saying no is a good strategy.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree, Darla. Saying no is such a powerful word. And sometimes it's just so hard for us to even use it because we're saying yes to everybody else. And sometimes the no is to ourselves because we're putting others first. I think there needs to be a balance. I think there needs to be a way where you're able to, Jenna used the example of putting on your mask first, to be able to serve others. And I really believe strongly in the concept that you can't pour from an empty cup. So if you're saying yes to everybody else, but you're not filling up yourself, then it's really difficult. You have nothing else to give.
That is so true. So Sam, did you face that in your culture where women were supposed to be everything for everybody all the time and smiling while you're doing it?
Absolutely. I felt like that, even though I moved here like almost 16 years ago, and we're still surrounded by Indian community around us. And there's this idea that, we have to continue the same kind of culture or lifestyle over here, and it can wear you down.
Yes. Where are you at really fast? Burnout, very much so. How about you, Jenna? Do you run into that? Do you feel like that is a lot of problem with some of the women that you work with?
100%. And, I probably didn't learn how to say no until I was well into my 30s and was like, oh, that's why I'm so burned out and frustrated and exhausted. So that took me a long time to learn. And, now I'm raising a 17-year-old girl, so I'm trying to teach her how to, be able to set those boundaries. But yeah, especially just like I said, with mothers, there's like this unspoken competition. So, again, I work specifically on body image. So I'm like, you got to look a certain way. You got to be presented a certain way. You got to wear certain things. You got to, be at the meetings and make the cookies and send the gifts. And like, even this week, I'm like, I haven't gotten the teachers gifts.
Yes. I was thinking about that. I remember that because I have 3 daughters, and at one time, and we've all faced that, but all the teachers and all the other friends and both of two of my daughters' birthdays are in December, and my other daughter, bless her heart, I'm so grateful. She has a birthday in July, so we get to breathe and just enjoy just that. But yeah, that is hard to be an inspiration where you are just flat weary. You're just worn out. And I am a people person, but I had even got to there are times when I'm like, I don't want to be around people. And it's not because I don't like them. I'm just worn out. So I can imagine for an introvert that happens even more, especially if they've been around someone like me who wants to, just be overly too much. So I want to ask all of y'all, and Sam, I'm going to come back to you because I want to hear your first tier. I want to hear the
top tier, right?
Yes, I want to hear that in a minute. But I want to ask y'all first. So, coming out of this year as an expert for yourself in each of your fields, the women you've been around, and just what you've been learning, in a positive way, what is something that you have learned to develop this year coming out of 2020 that you want to continue? Because 2020, and we're all saying the same thing. We want 2020 gone. But I'll be honest with you, that 2020 pushed me out of my nest. I learned to be very comfortable with being uncomfortable. And we wouldn't be doing the Lioness Summit had I not been pushed out of my nest. So I'm grateful for it. And I just would love to hear from each of y'all. And we'll go ahead and start with you, Jenna. If there was something from this year that you've learned either professionally or personally that you want to continue, that you want to hold on to and keep going with.
Yes, definitely. And it's something I've dabbled in over the years, but I've been a lot more consistent with reading and meditating and doing my prayer circle in the mornings. And it really sets the precedent for the day. And I've found that I also was unknowingly putting myself into a certain vibration to attract people to me who need my help, instead of frantically being like, I got to find people and I got to find women that want to work with me. Now it's just like, I've gotten so many more relationships built just for taking that pressure off.
Just pacing yourself.
Yes.
How about you, Marva?
Yeah, I think for me, it's about being open to what God is doing. Because sometimes, what we think should happen, going back to expectations again, what we think should happen, how things should look, how things should work out, it doesn't always work out that way. But to recognize that God is still up to something amazing, it's a very humbling lesson, to be honest, because the plans that I had for this year, we all know how 2020 has gone for the most part. A lot of our plans did not pan out. But then I look at the year and I realize that, wow, it still was an amazing year. So God continued to show me that I can be open to his plans and still trust that he's up to something good. So, yeah.
Yeah, and that's true. And like I said, him pushing us out of our nest. And Jenna, I'm going to go back to what you had said. Last year, if any of y'all have never heard of Mark Batterson, I highly encourage you to seek out any of his books and all of them. It's Batterson, and his first book that he wrote was called Draw the Circle, and I get chills on me right now because he started out. His first teacher said, "You're never going to be a writer," and this man has just touched the whole world, literally. That book alone has been translated into just about every language because it is just so pointed and it is just it's realistic. It's not, to hear him talk, he's very authentic. It's not legalistic, and it's not this, you got to do a checkbox. It is like Marva said, you just got to be open, but you've got to be open. You got to be willing to say, hey, I'm open. And that is one thing that me carrying into 21 myself is learning to say, like y'all were talking about, just slowing down, shifting my pace. I don't have to do everything all the time, and to being open to what's coming in front of me, not as a fear factor, but as a, if you put this in front of me, what it's almost like a treasure hunt. That God's got this in front of me, so I'm going to make the best of it. And whether I think I can do it or not, if God's put it in front of me, I'm going to do it. And it sounds a lot like what you were doing, Sam, already. So what was one thing that you picked up from coming into this year?
In March, I started realizing that, when the shutdowns began to hit, started realizing that all these years I've been like a hamster on a wheel trying to do so many different things. But actually, when everything was shut down, what really mattered was my relationship with my family and my relationship with God. And really, it was an eye-opener to see how many things were just in the scope of eternity really didn't matter, the things that I was pursuing. So it was really great to kind of get my perspective in place, look at really what needs to be weeded out of my life and what needs to be planted back in. So this has been a really great year to reflect and refocus my attention on the things that are important to me, my family, important in the sight of the Lord. And yeah, I have to say there are so many things that I'm not happy about this year, but so many things I'm so grateful for the things. It has been a revelation in terms of what relationships actually mattered, what are the activities in my life that matter. So it's been a very good reflective year, and I want to continue that, on time to time, every 3 months, take a stock of what am I doing? Does this work? Is this important in the long run, or am I just chasing the wind?
I like that you said that. This is one of my takeaways I'd like to put out there for everyone. Write down the things that you feel like you have, taken an evaluation of your year. Write down the things that did work, that out of all the years in your life, if they worked in 2020, you might want to keep doing it because this was a difficult, challenging year. But also to write down the things that didn't work. Why didn't they work? And it's okay. It is okay if some of the things that you were doing didn't pan out. There's a reason. And so learn from that and have a different perspective maybe on what you're taking into the next year. And I like what you said, to just weed out things that we don't need. And that's something I was going to ask. That's my next question for you two other ladies. What's something you want to leave out? I know for one thing that 2020 has taught me that I'm glad to let go of, and that is my self-doubt. I am so glad to let go of my fearfulness of the things that I think I can't do, that I have learned that if I'll just do them, I can. And it's almost, there's a cute little sign that says my decision-making skills are like, look like a squirrel in the middle of the road, just going back and forth. And I've learned to stop doing that. I don't have to do that. I don't have to make sure I'm making everybody around me happy. I've got to look at everything and let go of the fact that if I made a decision that's been very well thought out, it's not going to make everybody happy. And I'm okay with that. I am not here to impress everybody. I'm here to be myself and to be authentic and real and to help other people do the same. So I would love to hear from you, Jenna and Marva. What are a couple of a thing that y'all are letting go of? You don't want to take into 21.
Oh gosh.
Only one.
Okay. Only one thing that I don't want to take into 2021 would probably be doubt, which, I work really hard on, part of what I teach is about like attachment patterns. Why do we approach situations the way that we do? We all process differently. Why do we do that? And that is something that I still, personally struggle with. And this, I mean, was a year of doubt for a lot of people. And like Marva said, I'll have a lot of things to be grateful for in 2020. And it did teach me as well how to just basically sit back and stop trying to control the outcome of my life. It's just so easy to do, no matter, you know, if you're a believer or not. It's hard to sit back and let go of that control. So,
well, being in control is nothing but an illusion.
mhm.
I don't care how you slice it up. It is, none of us are ever really in control. And if you don't believe me, just put a child in the mix of all of your great plans and your wonderful accolades and all your schooling and everything. Put a kid in the room and it is just shot.
Yes.
Things change. So what about you, Marva?
Yeah, I think it's really being able to let go of what people think, being concerned about what other people think. For me, stepping more into my own, authenticity is not being worried about, if I do this, what would someone say, or what will they think of me or think of what I'm doing, or I really don't think they're thinking about me that much. So it's time to just let it.
And they're thinking about themselves.
Yeah.
Just like we're doing. It's
Exactly.
so funny when my mentor told me that. I said, I'm so worried, that about this and that. She said, trust me, they're not thinking about you. They are thinking about their own self and what they did wrong, or what they said. And I thought, oh, well, okay. That takes the pressure off all of us. So let me ask y'all real quick too, as far as like being inspiring, I'd love to hear from y'all just a couple of takeaways for everyone that you would say, hey, this is how to be an inspiration. For me, I understand that being an inspiration just means showing up every day. You don't have to have anything fancy or any tricks up your sleeve. Just showing up every day, being your authentic self, and not shrinking back, not watering yourself down. And we've all said that tonight, that we came to a point where we realized, hey, I don't have to please other people. I'm here to be what I'm here for and my purpose. And so my two takeaways are, number one, find your purpose. Take some time to reflect. What is your purpose? Because once you find your purpose, to me, that's your core of how you can show up every day. How about you, Jenna? What are a couple of takeaways you have?
Well, I think the first thing that I would say is to not put so much pressure on yourself to be this big inspirational, and especially in a world full of influencers, if we don't have 10,000 plus followers, then we must not be inspiring anybody. And that could be super, super stressful. But I feel like when I really started inspiring people, like you said, Darla, I just was authentic. And it took me 30 years to really embrace my individuality. I've always been like the oddball. I mean, people called me weird all the time growing up. And I used to be like, I'm unique. I'm not weird. But, just embracing who you authentically are, because just like I teach about, we're not all supposed to look alike. We're also not all supposed to be the same. And that's so that we can teach each other. And so I would just say, just being authentic to yourself and just really embracing just your individuality.
I like that. I didn't realize that I had been doing the comparison game, because when I was growing up, no one ever heard that. But I've realized that as an adult, I was always comparing myself to my friends. She's taller, she's prettier, she can sing better, she's skinnier, she looks greater in that, and she can do more of this. And I never realized I was how much damage I was doing to myself. Not that I don't want other people to do well. I love highlighting other people, but I don't want to have to be them.
Yeah.
And I did always felt like, well, if I was as tall as she, I could do this. And, I have learning to let go of that is freeing, like nothing else. How about you, Sam?
I really like what Jenna said. So many times when we think of being inspiring, then the synonymous word we think of is being influential. And when we think about influence, then we think about this big platform that you're supposed to have to influence people. But being inspiring has nothing to do with having a platform to influence or, having a following or anything like that. I have two older women in my life who just inspire me so much by the kind gestures they, do for me every single day, whether it's a meal or taking care of my kids. It's just so inspiring to see that they do it from a place of love and generosity and giving rather than from a place that they want anything back from me.
Mm,
Another
like
thing
that.
that I want to share is when you want to be a person who can inspire someone, first you need to be inspired, and also you need to be open and vulnerable for people to see your
Yeah.
struggles.
Mm.
If you want to hide behind something and inspire from a place of pretense, that's never going to work. And one of the people that really inspire me is my mom. And I was just thinking, why do I admire my mom so much? And then I finally concluded that I know how much she struggles with certain things, and I know how much pressure she has, and in that and through that she shines. So because I know the background, because I know what happens behind the stage, I admire her so much more, and she is an inspiration to me. And I kind of felt like it's good to let people know your struggles, your
Mm,
to be vulnerable, and that can be really inspirational because now people know you are doing this from not because you figured it all, but because you are also taking these baby steps. That's what I tell my
mm,
coaching clients. I'm not teaching you such and such a concept because I have arrived at this. Walk with me, this is what I'm learning, and I'm going to teach you this, and we can walk together. So I think for me, being inspiring is not from a point of arrival, but as a journey.
so true. How about you, Marva?
It's something else when you have to go last after all. I mean, I agree with everything that was said. I think one thing that I would add is really going back to the source. When I think of inspiration, I think, the most inspiring person is Jesus, and really looking at, what his life was like. And there's nothing more inspiring than someone whose life is totally sold out for God, because it spills over into every area of their lives, in the way they parent, in the way they lead, in the way they relate to others, and the way they treat others as well. So to me, being inspiring is going back to that source and being inspired by God himself. And I think the other thing that I would say really is to be able to rise above the noise, because I think this year really made it clear for me that there's so much negative news and so many things out there that we can find to complain about, and and really, I mean, we have good reason, right? But to be able to say, what, I'm not going to go down that road. I'm not going to buy into the negativity, but instead I'm going to be a voice for what is right and pure, and what is just positive as well, because there are enough people who are going to complain and who are going to find something negative to say, but we don't have to be those women. We don't have to go down that road. So
That is so true. One thing that I love about what you just said is, to me, and I see this in all of you, is resilience.
Mm.
Resilience doesn't mean that you can just bounce back. Resilience means adaptability, that you can adjust to whatever is around you and stay authentic. But then that comes back to understanding who you are, letting go of trying to please everybody around you, and to also understand that you can't do everything all the time, and you're not supposed to. So I'm giving all of you women right now permission during the holidays. You don't have to bake cookies and sew the cute little dresses and the smocking and have all the Christmas decorations and the baking. You just do what you can, and know that the most important thing is time around other people and developing those relationships. And that's what I love getting to do this with each of you, because this relationship between leaders is vital. and getting y'all in front of each other to know one another, to lean into each other's resources excites me. So you can, as leaders, and I say this respectfully, as leaders, we get so very siloed, we get so very busy with everything we have to do that sometimes we don't see and we don't have a chance to get to meet the other leaders around us that could pour into our life and sharpen us and challenge us. And so I appreciate y'all being on here, and I can't wait to see how y'all develop a relationship, down the road of being there for one another. One thing that I would like to do real quick, we've only got a few more minutes, but Sam, I'd like to hear just the rest of your tier real quick, if you could just brief, because I do want to close this out, but I don't want to be disrespectful and not get to hear the rest of yours.
Sure. So tier 3 would be the journey that the Lord took me through when I had my second son. So this was how I overcame fear. Right when I thought I learned it all, and the Lord was teaching me how to lean into His sufficiency, the Lord said, it's time to move up. It's another level for you. And when my son was born, we started to realize that he was having some food allergies, not just to one particular food, but multiple food allergies. In the first 5 years of his life, I really felt so emotionally drained because it was trial and error with different foods, and he would, have these reactions. And there was one particular anaphylactic reaction that we almost thought we lost him. So that left me completely shaken and drained out. I remember sitting in a doctor's office. I went for a physical, and the doctor came inside, and she looked at me and she said, "Man, you look so adrenal fatigued." I never heard that word. I was like, what is adrenal fatigue? And that's how I felt. I just didn't know the word. I felt so emotionally spent, felt very defeated, very afraid all the time, very anxious, because I felt like I was watching this child play at the edge of a cliff, and any bite can just throw him off, right? So that's when I heard the words that said, the Lord was saying to me, if you are afraid all the time, you will have a defeated life. And from that sentence, I took out, be unafraid and you will become undefeated. So Unafraid and Undefeated is the name of my channel. And that's where I share the thoughts that the Lord placed on my heart. I try to do it every week. I haven't been doing since the past 3 months because I was coaching a few people. I'm also a part of John Maxwell team. And that's a part of this decision, because fear is pervasive. If you allow it in one area of your life, it's just going to spread into other areas of your life too. So I started taking action, little baby steps, to not just dwell on this one little factor that my son was dealing. And thank God, by God's grace, he has outgrown so many of those.
Great.
And being a part of John Maxwell team was a step of action that I took to pursue my purpose, and in that the Lord was, slowly guiding me in a path of courage. Courage is not just one virtue, but it is a virtue that that it is actually every virtue at its testing point. Love is not really love until it comes to a testing point, and you have to take an action of courage. And same thing with trust. I did trust the Lord in relation to my marriage and how the Lord brought the events, but then I had to continue to trust the Lord. I had to hold this child with an open hand and say, Lord, he's yours. He's not mine to hold back. And in that, the Lord helped me overcome fear. It's still a battle. I have to speak truth to myself every single day. I have to learn to lean into His sufficiency. I have to learn to overcome fear, holding on to scripture. But yeah, that's where the words for unafraid and undefeated came from.
I like that. I think that's something that we all can apply to our life, is to live it unafraid and undefeated. And as we go into 2021, I want to thank each one of you ladies for sharing some of your story and your life, so people can get to know you better. And I appreciate what y'all have offered, and in the way of having a chance to get to know you better and being a part of each of your programs. So if y'all will look on the Lioness Summit, And we will have an opportunity to share with you what each of these ladies are offering for exclusively just for you being here. You'll also receive an email with a recording here. And I want to get you to share back with us your comments. And I would love to hear from all of you that are not only just watching and on all of the different Facebooks watching. We'd love to hear back from you of some things that you have learned from tonight and any questions that you have. And I just want to wish you all a Merry Christmas, a happy holiday. I believe, is this day 8 of Hanukkah? I do believe so. And I just want to let everyone know that during this season of celebration, of miracles, and of inspiration, that every one of us can be a part of that. So don't give up on that. Please don't feel like that if you didn't hit every single goal you have this year, that you're not an inspiration, because you are if you just show up every day. And I want to thank Jenna and Marva and Sam for joining us. And I want to thank Kendall for making sure that all of this flowed. So thank you, Kendall, for being there too. And want to wish you all a happy holiday, and we'll see you in 2021. I think our next one is January 27th. Is that right, Kendall? I think it's January 27th is the next Lioness Summit. I can't believe that we're already going into New Year. So thank you, ladies, very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Merry Christmas, everyone.
Merry Christmas.
Merry
Yes.
Christmas, Jenna and Marva.
Yeah.